For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh. Today we are jumping into some nostalgia. This is Simple Plan, Kids in the Crowd. Plan, The Kids in the Crowd leans into the celebratory 25th anniversary of the iconic pop punk band, kind of talking about their roots from a basement Canadian band to the worldwide success they are today. This is going to be a shorter kind of review. There's not going to be any mental health aspects with it, though. If you are someone you know is struggling, the mental health education library is in the show notes below. But let's kind of just dive right into this documentary. So I want to talk about slow burn movies for a second, and I promise it's going to make sense in context. But traditionally, slow burn movies are the type of movies where your first, maybe let's say 2 acts really have a really slow pace. They feel kind of sluggish, and you're not sure whether or not you want to finish the movie because you're not sure if the payoff in the 3rd act is going to make it worth sitting through first 2 acts of that movie. The Kids in the Crowd has the opposite problem. Like, I feel like that's like the best way like I can describe my biggest qualm with this movie is that it just feels top heavy. And that term usually refers to a band's album. Typically when you have all of the good songs are like the first half of it, and then the last half of the album, or even maybe the last third of the album, just kind of doesn't have that same quality as the first half or 2/3 of the rest of the album. Kind of before I start just really kind of tearing apart some of this movie, let me just start off by saying that I had a lot of really emotional reactions to this film that I wasn't expecting. I think it does do a really good job at bringing that out and kind of showcasing the importance of the music of Simple Plan. I grew up on their music, so songs like I'm Just a Kid, Perfect, I'd Do Anything were regular rotations in my teenage years. And I'm a sucker for a good documentary, a good biopic, especially in the music genre, when I kind of get to see how a band kind of got their start, and it's inspiring, and it makes me want to make more art. I felt like all of that, these first 2 acts really hit it. They do an incredible job. And even in the 3rd act, for as messy as it is, there are certain parts that it brought me to almost tears, where I was like, man, I wasn't expecting to feel this way. And I think, again, that's the signs of good filmmaking. It's the signs of good direction, and it's the signs of good narration. So Didier Charette is the director behind this movie, and to his credit, he only has one existing credit outside of The Kids in the Crowd. And you do see a lot of that evidence here in this 3rd act. So this movie kind of has this really beautiful pace to it for the formation of it, the kind of complications of the rocky starts in the beginning, how hard they were in the first early years. In the first 2 albums, I think the pacing of that portion of the film is spectacular. Then you reach the transition period of the 3rd album, which is the self-titled album, and I feel like this movie just kind of crumbles under the weight of everything else. And it's really weird to explain because it feels like the pacing kind of goes out the window, the vulnerability goes out the window, and it's kind of just like either somebody got into this movie that parts were cut out. This was originally intended to be a much longer, or they really just kind of didn't know what to do with this last 35 minutes. And honestly, I think that's kind of where this film crumbles. I think the last 30 minutes of this movie plays it way too safe. The pacing is super awkward. Like, I knew that they had other albums past the self-titled album, but they don't ever spend enough time focusing on it. This movie, it just jumps around way too much in the third act, and really some of the more damning stuff that are featured in the third act are just kind of glazed over. Some of the drama and some of the complications that happen among some of the band members, again, just kind of glazed over. Like, it's, you know, there's a portion in the third act where Pierre kind of talks about his anxiety, really glazed over. Like, it doesn't feel like it spends enough time to really kind of flesh out the later years of the band, and that really feels like a travesty, because it essentially feels like it's trying to cash in out on nostalgia rather than humanize the subjects. And with that said, I am ready to run this one through the Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give Simple Plan, The Kids in the Crowd, a 4 out of 5. Overall, I thought this was a pretty solid documentary. I thought this was a really impressive debut feature from director Didier Charette, but it does have evidence of first film. The first 2 acts of this movie have impeccable pacing, but the third act really does fall under. It tries to jam way too much information, and as a result, what you get is awkward pacing, weird transitions, and just kind of a messy timeline that feels polar opposite from the first 2 acts of this film. And this film also really does play it safe and does not showcase the band as vulnerable as we could see them in this last act. If you guys have caught Simple Plan, The Kids in the Crowd, what did you guys think? If you haven't, it is now streaming on Amazon Prime. That is going to do it for us on this episode. But until next time, remember to keep it classy, keep rocking.